Yep. So Austin asked me to think of a topic, and I wanted to talk about anthologies. I guess the flow of this talk is going to be sort of about our history as Freak, my history self-publishing, and the the positives of doing an anthology for yourself. But before that, we should okay. We should first start off with what is an anthology. I'm sure a lot of you who are here know what an anthology is. If you don't, it's a collection of work from various authors. It could be musicians, poets, whatever, collected into a book, an album. So, some of the famous ones in comic history is Raw Magazine, Kramer's Ergo for the modern day reader, Best American Comics, and most notably, Freak. Woo! But before we get into that, I'd like to start a little bit at the beginning, which is myself. That's me as a baby, if you can't tell. So Freak started out at SFAI, San Francisco Art Institute, which has now been closed. Some money stuff happened. I'm not on the board. I can't tell you exactly what happened, but I went there. Miles, Mara, my two other co-founding members of Freak, we all went there. I think the thing that makes us, or the thing that makes San Francisco and Art Institute and Freak unique is that we didn't have an illustration program. We didn't have a comics program. Of course, you don't have to go to art school to do any of this. But at my school, we didn't have a concentrated course for these things. Sorry. So yeah, for all of us who were like more into illustration and more into comics, we would all go to the print department. There wasn't too many people that were, I think, like avid readers of comics, save like a few people, me and some others. So at school, like it kind of became my personality, my thing. I had a talk with my teacher, Asuka Osawa, who is teaching at Tufts right now. She's also an amazing illustrator, zine maker. She was teaching a zine class, and I took it, and it really opened my eyes to the possibility of self-publishing. And I think for a lot of people, they don't really know what the entrance into publishing is, into bookmaking. And I think that sort of freed me up to just think about making first and figure out how to put out stuff after. So yeah, I started, I think this is dated 2015. This is like Wild Issue 0. I think I made it when I was like a junior in college. The left side is the first drawings I did of Wild. It was just like notes on, it was sketches on my notes, which if you read aren't very extensive. I just started writing the letter D and God on the bottom, and yeah, I didn't do too much. But yeah, I did that as like a proof of concept type thing. And then I graduated 2017. So I probably started 2016 and continued on until 2018 doing these self-published smaller ones. Eventually Floss Editions, the people who did these bigger collections that Austin mentioned, they hopped in around Wild 7, and that's when we started working on these ones. But the older ones were fairly simple, just black and white stuff that I would print off of my HD or my digital printer. Everything was super up close. I was really nervous about drawing the figure was pretty self-conscious about it. So I would do these close quarter comics, as I call them. But yeah, now with the collection coming out from Oni, I redrew a bunch of pages. I've been working on the same 2 story arcs since 2016. I don't consider myself to be a vanguard in comics, or, I don't think I'm doing anything new. I just want to do the best of what I'm doing, the best that I can for what I'm doing. I want to smooth the wheel out as much as possible. I don't want to reinvent it. So this is pretty evident of that. It's the same scene from the one on the left is from the self-published ones, to the middle is Floss, and then to the most recent version of this scene to the right. Yeah, all of it was also sort of so that I could get published one day. And I was like, well, I can't just publish this work that I made when I was fresh out of college or whatever. So, redrawing and trying to make it the best I can. Yeah. So please go ahead and buy the book if you'd like. Put a thumbs up or a clap in the chat if you're proud of me. I would appreciate that very much. All right, moving on to the other 2 members of the group. We have Miles and Mara. This is them as in their vampiric forms this past Halloween. When I was 2017, post 2017, I was like going around to different festivals selling my comics. They were finishing out their last 2 years of college. Yeah, and they joined me on the last, in their last year of college, they joined me in touring. So they started selling their comics too, and getting themselves into comics, making comics. Let me go back real quick. I think what's really nice about Freak and having 3 curators, which is also, it's a very difficult thing to do too, curating a single anthology with 3 people, because everyone obviously has different tastes, different goals in mind when approaching a single issue. And I think that's kind of the beauty of Freak. I'll talk about this more, or I'll repeat it again later, but initially we used to start out, like when we first started, we got a couple artists individually and then put them together into this single thing. As time went on, we found out that it was easier for us to just relinquish control to one person at a time, to have one curator per issue. They can do whatever they wanted, and it was just purely up to them. Once school shut down and we lost the ability to print for essentially free, we would sneak in, which we are not the cause of the downfall of our institution. We were paying, but we were using that digital printer for free to print a bunch of copies. Sorry. But yeah, so anyways, I lost my train of thought, but let's keep going. Mara's work this is Mara Ramirez. Mara is very ecologically, what's the word? Mindful. Mara's work is much more loose, abstract, poetic. Of course, they deal in figure, it's more abstract figuratism. Their work is, I think, less representational than me and Miles's work. So they tend to get work that is akin to that. And then Miles' work, Mara also is the author of Moab, which highly regarded book. A lot of people love it. I love it. It's a tiny little thing. It's beautiful about their trip with their ex to Moab. The book is incredibly emotional, which isn't to say that it's not more emotional than anyone else's book. I think Mara does a really good job of honing in and taking time to really absorb the emotions. I think when you read Mara's work, it doesn't feel like you're reading a comic per se. It feels almost like you're listening to a song. There's a silent sound as you read it, which I think is very beautiful. Miles's work is more representational. It is more akin to like indie comics, fanographics type stuff. His work, his narrative storytelling deals a lot with slice of life, but also it is like a lot of gag as well. I took a lot of inspiration from him in trying to think more about humor, incorporate it into my own work, the storytelling. Miles doesn't stay in one genre, though he recently has been sort of focusing and try to do a blend of slice of life, social commentary with a sort of like Meg and Mog esque humor. Yeah, he does this in his book Hive, which came out this year. Very good book. Everybody should pick it up, as well as Moab, as well as Wild. Everybody pick everything that we have in the catalog. You should pick up today. But yeah, Miles does these beautiful half digital, half traditionally inked, hand-colored pieces. His 150-page book is fantastic. Yeah, so when Miles and Mara were finishing their last year of school, they put together a show in the Diego Rivera Gallery, which was the San Francisco Art Institute's student gallery. Since we didn't have an illustration program, it was usually reserved for performance art, installations, paintings, etc. And so having a comic show, it's narrative, but I thought of it more as a comic show. I think part of their goal for the show, which would be something that we carried on to Freak, was to bring all of our friends who didn't do comics to make comic-like work, to make sequential art, and sort of introduce them to that idea. Since we didn't have a lot of people that made comics, we wanted to foster a community that, that was full of people that made comics, but we didn't have that. So we were just trying to like convert our friends who were in the ceramics department or the painting department to start doing comics, sort of trick them into doing comics. So I think this was pretty essential to the formation of Freak, which was founded on March 24th, 2018 at the Specs Adler Museum Cafe. I've been thrown out of here. I love it here, and the staff loves me too. We were chatting over drinks. I think so. At the time we were in school, a lot of SFAI students in the upper class were having shows in the galleries around town. Every show that you would go to was curated to include the same artists, the same people. So there was a sense of like just not being able to intercept the scene, and it felt like curators. I remember I had a coworker who came in from Chicago. He'd been there for a month, didn't really know anybody, and he got this opportunity to curate a show, and he curated the show with the same popular artists that were from our school, that were in the San Francisco scene. And that struck me in such a way where, I don't know, I think going forward doing Freak, I wanted to put myself back, and I didn't want to have an anthology that was just another anthology that included, all the same popular people. I think what happens is curators begin to see curation. I think curation is an art form in and of itself, but not something that, I don't know, that should be as celebrated. Anyways, I didn't want the focus to be on us, and I wanted to uplift other people that I thought deserved recognition that weren't getting it, which I think is the same goal that most anthologies that are pure of heart have. They just want to show you the work that their friends are making. I think that's what Tinfoil, Jaywalk, whatever Floyd does is aiming to do. Of course, be groundbreaking in its own right, but ultimately it's love for other people and other cartoonists, which I think is what we should value rather than trying to, build our own clout or whatever. But I don't know. I may be reaching, but yeah, we decided that we would talk about it, that we would create Freak. Freak was Mara's idea. It was just during our drunken conversation, the three of us talking about our grief with the San Francisco art scene, and partially with like comics, creating something that we could have and we could foster, and we didn't have to have the approval of other people. So that is on the right. We wrote that down that day. That's my handwriting. Whatever you want to do, we can do it. You can do it. So yeah, that's my message to you. And thus a legend was born. This is Miles's claymation. I mean clay, they're not emotion. His clay figures, portraits of us, are busts. Yeah, when I had short hair. But yeah, these are the issues. Am I missing any? Oh yeah. We have 1 through 10 here. 8 was the one that we opened up on. Let's go back. This is Mara's illustration, an amazing issue. All right, let's go back. Oh yeah, all right, there we go. Yeah, so I think issues 1 through 3 were curated by the three of us at once. And then after that, we began to take turns with who curated at what time. And it wasn't until Freak 9 and 10, the last one shown here, where we had to consolidate. We no longer had the freedom of printing for free. So we had to put our heads together and make this one thing. Mara wasn't a part of the curation for that, because initially Miles had curated it by himself. He had in a single issue that was ready to go to the printer, but the school shut down. So we sat on it for a couple months. And then I, thinking that book was going to come out, had already started putting together my thing. And I had gone into contact with Tiny Splendor of LA and Oakland to risograph press the book. And so seeing that Miles didn't have a printer anymore, we decided to combine the two into this super issue, which is pretty cool. I really like it. But yeah, here's some of the pages from it. I think you can see our curation, our variety and style on full display here. Yeah, and also the thing is, like, Miles, me, Mara, we all generally read the same stuff. I think there are definitely times, where like they would put something onto my radar that I didn't know of before. I think what's also, what's fun about the thing is, like, we don't have a sort of theme or through line for the issues. We just kind of let people bring in whatever they want to. I think a thing that like I had read like a interview with Sammy Harcum and sort of his process on curation and just requiring new material, which is something that we try to do nowadays. But yeah, it's sort of all over the place. There's very traditional work that you'll find. There's more avant-garde stuff. A lot of these artists are, not published by any big publishers, which, I think is a goal of ours. We don't try to select for the clout. So, we do just, yeah, we want to build a place for other artists to feel comfortable and to, have a place to print their work. That being said, we do select beforehand who gets into the issues. So it's not like a submission format. Yeah, another thing is that a lot of people from the Bay tend to go to New York, the Big Apple, or LA. Nowadays, San Francisco's kind of run by a lot of tech. Art is kind of being squeezed out, or so it seems. I don't know. I think with these things, it always feels like art is, but I think what that does is it makes people huddle up closer together and really like, I don't know, hold on to the thing that they have. I feel like we get really nostalgic for something that we've never experienced in San Francisco. For a lot of people that grow up in the Bay, we've only heard stories or we've seen images, clips, videos of what San Francisco used to be like, what the, comic scene used to be like. And we yearn for that. I don't know if we successfully do it in San Francisco. I think there's a lot of players and characters in San Francisco that sort of operate on their own, or are people that move here for business, move here for their day jobs, but sort of work in isolation and make stuff for themselves. But that being said, there are there are a lot of other presses here, and there's a lot that I'm missing here, but we do have on the bottom 3 anthologies that are going on now that are Bay Area run. Don't all include work that is solely from the Bay, but we have Floyd. Is it Austin? Is it Tangman or Tangman?
I say Tangman.
Tangman.
But,
okay.
I think he'd be fine with whatever you say.
All right, Floyd. If I email me if it's wrong. Floyd's Jaywalk. I've met a lot of Floyd's friends at Floyd's events, and yeah, it feels like a totally homegrown effort of just friends getting together to make work, and being incredibly talented and coming from a place totally out of convention and just from the heart. We have Harry's Anthology, which is a horror anthology. We have the Baileys, which are another collection of artists from the Bay. I know that Lawrence went through CCA, which has a comics program. A couple of my friends have gone there. But yeah, there is a lot of people in San Francisco that make comics. We don't quite have the attention that other places get, or we don't make comics that are the popular format or whatever. But we're here, damn it. Of course, we have Tiny Splendor and Floss Editions, 2 of whom have printed some of my stuff, some of Freak stuff. So yeah, I don't have much more, so I'll freeform real quick. I do think, sorry, my neighbor has a bunch of peacocks, so I can't, it's getting really hot in here. So if I start sweating, it's because I'm keeping the window closed so you can't hear them going crazy right now. Anyway, yeah, anthologies are a great way to, I think, give yourself some power, not feel beholden to um, people for the ability to make work or print your work or whatever. There are cheap avenues that you can explore. Um, you know, you can reach out to multiple anthologies, make your own anthology. There's a will, there's a way. But yeah, I guess that's the extent of my free form. So yeah, sorry if I went too fast, but that is my talk. Yeah.
That was great, Cristian. Thank you. Can I do you want to stop sharing the screen and then we can do some Q&A? Someone just entered now, just as the Q&A begins. Well, I have a lot of questions to ask you, so I'm going to start off, and people can ask their questions in the chat as well. I'm kind of wondering the aspect of Freak that is that is a collective in what you and Mara do. Are the core members you, Mara, and Miles? That's what I've always assumed. Or do you do things like share printing costs for books, or how do the publications that are Freak publications, what's the kind of just basic realities behind those books? What are your thoughts around however you do it? What is the thinking behind it?
Me, Miles, and Mara, we've always printed our own books. The Freak Fund just goes into like freak stuff, printing the anthologies, printing more t-shirts, which, you know, we get by selling those things. Selling our own stuff, we keep that money out of it. Either we do, that's why we do Kickstarters or whatever. We I don't know, it, you know, we have a sort of system of like, we would give like 10 contributor copies. Now we've moved on to like giving some money up front. You know, it's all according to like what your level in this is, in publishing or whatever. But yeah, we try to not use the Freak money, and we use our own money if it's for a solo project. I think with Shaheen's book that we printed, Shaheen Beardsley's Oh Boy, we used Freak money for that because it was a Freak production. But if it's our own thing, we pay out of pocket.
Right. I was going to ask that because with that book, he's not one of the core members. Is that someone, how did that project come about? Was that like a mutual decision of all of you? Or yeah, how did that happen?
Yeah. It was something that we had been like, we had talked about like a little bit, just about like the possibility of like putting out a book for somebody. I had brought it up to Shaheen, I think maybe 2 years in advance, a year in advance or so. And then, yeah, I just asked Mara and Miles, like, hey, can we, use the money for this? And it depleted our stock, our fund, our Freak fund. But yeah, it was worth it. It just, it's interesting to have to figure that out because we have that's been our only publishing thing like that for another person, and sort of trying to like figure out a money situation for that, because whatever he made from that book would just go to his money rather than the Freak fund. So then it was like, I don't know, having to like figure out how we would make money, or we just lose money, and we make money in other ways. But for, in addition of 100, 150, so be it, whatever. I think the goal is kind of just to like lift other people into other publishing deals or whatever.
Well, I have some follow-up questions on that, but I'm gonna hold back for a second and ask this question from Tatiana. And she asks, do you want to read this question, Tatiana, or do you want me to read it for you?
Sure, I could read it. Cristian,
Okay.
thank you so much. How do you share your work and get it out in the larger world? And also, are you willing to talk about numbers? Like, how much does it cost to put out an anthology?
Yeah. The way that I did it was, I mean, obviously, like Instagram played a big part in it. Instagram's kind of it hasn't been as reliable as of recently. The most success I think I've had is by going to different festivals. My favorite on the West Coast is Short Run Seattle. I used to sell my comics for very cheap, and of course, this isn't something that anyone else has to do. But my sort of method was I would always give my comics to other artists that I really liked, other people that I really wanted to see my work, to be friends with. And I think those people are usually the people that get it almost immediately, you know? It's sometimes a harder sell to have that connection happen with somebody passing by the table or whatever. But that was always my method. If you want to know a good one for the Instagram, when you see somebody post and you see it was posted 1 minute ago, always comment, always say something like, wow. And it gets their attention. But if you do it too much, they will unfollow you and you will lose. So don't do that. Cost wise, when I was like printing my own little zines, I mean, it was like I was like losing a lot of money. Because I had like a digital printer, so it's like printing really slow. The cartridges are pretty expensive. I got extremely lucky and have the good fortune of having such supportive people like Floss and Tiny, who Floss was they were doing, and perfectly acceptable, I think, was doing this as well. I think post-pandemic it's a different thing, but they would print for free and you would just split the edition. So you would sell yours, they would sell theirs and make back their money from it. I don't think that happens as much now. I think also there's like a paper shortage. There's a bunch of factors, but I got incredibly lucky that they were so kind. Sorry. Max from Tiny Splendor did the same thing with Freak 9 and 10. So I've just had the good fortune of having people that are incredibly supportive, which I wish for everybody. Everybody can find that. Yep.
I just want to follow up on that a little bit. You're talking about with the Shaheen's book, you know, like it depletes your fund, and you know, but it's something you guys wanted to do, and then figuring out ways to make things affordable in terms of it's good when a publisher gives you half a run. Now you have a book out from a publisher, a large publisher, only a large-ish publisher, however you want to describe it, that has access to bookstore distribution, things like that. I wonder, from your perspective, someone who's worked in both realms, what are the problems that still remain problems in terms of sitting down and having money to focus on your work in the realm of publishing your work and other people's work yourself, in this new, you know, just the first week of having this book out. But what are things you see as common problems that pop up in both areas, and what are maybe key differences?
Man, I don't know. I think the thing with printing with like a larger distributor publisher is that like sometimes you're just not as like in tune with what's going on, or you're not, you know, I've been thinking about this a lot, where with Freak or with my own comics, I was able to like track how things were doing. I was much more in control, and now it's like I have to relinquish a lot of that, and like there's a lot of anxiety that comes from it, but there's nothing I can do about it. So, you know, it's just like, I don't know, it's like the blood in your body, you know, it's pumping, you know, it's going, but you can't see it, but it's happening unconsciously. It's going on, you know, subconsciously. um with freaking stuff, like, I don't know, we would do like a small printing of like 100 or so and be like, okay, done, you know. um I think the like a similarity between them, I don't know, it's uh, doing a book for like a big publisher has been so, like, I don't know, I think I just kind of turn my brain off and just do it, which isn't maybe the best. I should be a little bit more aware of what's going on. But it starts to get a little like um, eldritch, where it's so beyond me, you know. It's just this bigger, higher thing. Um, but yeah, did I answer it? I don't know.
Oh yeah, totally.
Okay.
Maybe like what the art feels like in the different mediums, like just like your work coming out in the way that you have. How do you, maybe not so much the business side of it, but maybe how you feel about how the work feels in different contexts.
Um, I mean, I think I approach projects now with a little bit more caution. Um, I never had the like I never had somebody tell me like, oh, maybe not this, or I don't know if we can do this. Um, you know, with Shaheen's book, it was just kind of like, yeah, man, like do whatever you want. Which you know, Zach, my editor, Zach Soto, very supportive and um, you know, hands off. So, you know, but there's like a legal team, there's a PR team, there's like teams, you know. And with Shaheen, his comic is like he like kills his best friend, skins his body and like jerks off in his like skin suit. And I don't know, it just it's fun to invite somebody to like come and do that and just let them like do whatever the fuck they want and be like, okay, well, you know, I asked for this, so let's print it, you know. But yeah, am I getting to it?
Yeah. No, that
Okay,
makes total sense. That makes total
good.
sense. I'm gonna give people a little more time to ask a question, because I'll ask. You know, I grew up in San Francisco, and so you're talking about, when you were talking about you know, this moment now, you're pining away for a comic scene of the past, and you wish things were like that now. I have to say, with the stuff that, to me, not living there now, it feels like a very vibrant time for independent and self-published comics in the Bay Area. But I'm wondering maybe what time period you're talking about, or what's the stuff you're pining away for?
Well, I think we always think back to like late 60s stuff, you know,
Right.
of just being like, oh yeah, you know, like everything was like so like loose and cool, you know. People really, I think there's a muck and grime that I think is of course still there, but it's as if the as if the puddle has like dried out and it's just this little bit left. Everything is so clean in the city. Well, it's not. I mean, there's become such a disparity between wealth and poverty in the city that like post pandemic is so clear now. People have gotten richer. Um, and it's incredibly disheartening. But I think when you're with such wealthy people, you want to hold on to that dirt and that grime and be as like fuck you as possible, as dirty as possible. And I don't know, when you see all these like dirty hippie guys, you're like, yeah, okay, you know. I mean, not probably not the best people in the world, but you know, it's that sentiment that like, I don't know, like just also just being isolated and away from like every other scene. Like I feel like the East Coast has a really like strong scene where there's a like-mindedness in what they're like going after with their comics and the sort of culture of their comics. In San Francisco, like there are a lot of people, there are, you know, it is vibrant, but like I think like all of Floyd's friends are like a good couple years like below me, Miles, and Mara. So there's sometimes like a gap between us, you know. Everyone's kind of like working in their own pocket as well. Yeah.
Are there people that, do you find that people are spread across the Bay Area? Or are there people that are living, are the majority of artists and cartoonists, maybe cartoonists specifically, do you find them like in areas of the Bay Area that are specifically not San Francisco?
No, I think there's a lot of people in Oakland. Well, it's like I think the thing is that like you meet a lot of people at, like zine fests and stuff like that. But you'll have like artists that are like being published by like big, you know, big publishers that like you read their bios and they're like in Oakland and you're like, I've never seen you at anything. And maybe that's my own failing, but like it's just so bizarre to me that like they've been here this entire time and you know, I didn't know, or it wasn't, they weren't a part of it. But again, that could just be my own failing in that regard to not have noticed. But yeah, otherwise, like, yeah, it's just everybody's like usually in the city or in Oakland, and then everybody else, we just get, you know, I get hip to people from like Instagram or Twitter, and I just try to find people that don't have like a lot of followers, which I don't know how much that translates to real life or whatever, but that's sort of the goal with it, you know?
Yeah.
Hi,
I'm
Floyd.
gonna read this question from Generoso. Hi, Christian. Thanks for your talk. Speaking of San Francisco, I asked Walker Metling a similar question during his presentation, as he's from Providence, which has a similar large DIY underground music scene as San Francisco has. Have you had any success with showcasing the Freak anthologies through the music scene?
Yeah, it's that's funny. Yeah, I don't know how much comes from that. I remember Miles. He's in a band that's doing fucking great. Fake Fruit. They just toured Europe. Sounds so cool. But a lot of our like, we did a fake Freak Fruit tour in 2018, where we traveled with the band up to Vancouver and sold our comics alongside their, you know, their merch. And it I've been thinking a lot about the sort of correlation between the two, and how you always kind of find like comics and music coming together in these ways where like, I mean, there's so many examples and I can't name them all, but like, you know, Alex G's artist that I don't know his name, but Chubby Pumpers on Instagram. He's a comic guy, but you know, he's into this stuff. I think a lot of the people that go to art school are into comics now and they're into cool music. I don't know. I wish I was better at remembering stuff, but like I think there's a really big connection, and I wish other people could chime in on it because, you know, yeah, they go hand in hand. I wish I could, you know, pin all the dots or whatever. But yeah.
I'm going to read a question. Unless, Ian, do you want to read this question yourself, or would you like me to read it for you?
Sure, I can read it.
Okay, great.
Hi, Ian.
Hey, Christian. Thank you for the great talk.
Of course.
Yeah, so I'm curious about, you know, what it takes to make a big, long, coherent work like Wild, and how, you know, that would compare to making shorter, maybe standalone comics, and then how you think that's affected your development as a cartoonist. Like you kind of touched on it a little bit, and I'm interested in in hearing more of that, seeing the process of as you develop the work. So
about like long form.
Yeah, just because it's a big long book. So I think it's a challenge, but I'd like to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. I think I haven't put as much thought as I could, and I think if I'm, God willing, given the chance to continue to do it, I would like to. I think you have to put a lot of effort and love into world building. I think it's something that you have to sit down and do. I think moving forward, I do want to like write a lot of it first and then go off. I think it needs a structure. I think in Freak, I'm the person that like read a lot of manga growing up. So the stuff that I gravitate towards is long form. It's epics. It's, something like Naruto, something that goes on for a long, long time. That's what I like getting invested in. I want a world that's fleshed out, and all the players, and but I think since in the past couple of years, like I said earlier, I've only been working on the same two story arcs. So it is really going to kind of be a test of my writing ability, to think of new stuff and fully flesh it out. And yeah, so I'll have a more detailed answer once I do it and once I sit down and really think it out. I was on the plane the other day for 2 hours, and I just sat there just staring off into space, just thinking about it. And sometimes when I can't go to sleep, I start to write the next book in my head, and then I go to sleep. So hopefully that doesn't happen to you when you read my book. But yeah, I hope that answers it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian.
Oh yeah, and Chubby Pumpers is Elliot Beck. That's his name.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, that's right.
That makes me want to just ask a follow-up question that's similar to a question I've already asked, but just, with wanting to make more work, or that, you finish this long book and thinking about making work in the future, how, and this loops around to what I was saying before, how do you think of ways of making it sustainable for yourself and figuring out ways to make this, when I look at your work, it seems like something that definitely, there's not even, knowing the context around it, there's a lot of love for this work, there's following for this work, and you also have the ability to make work at a certain kind of volume regularly. And I wonder how you think about that as making it something sustainable for yourself, and also the ethos that you have with Freak, and making an anthology with friends and working with work that you don't think gets seen enough. How do you make that project sustainable as well? Or are those things that you're thinking now how to make the work and get the books out, and day to day you'll figure out what the next problem is? Or are there things that you want to think of beyond that in planning for a future of comics that makes sense to you?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. I think like a lot of what I do is just like, people are like, hey, can you do this thing? And then I add it onto the thing, and I put myself fully into it. So it's hard for me to like think fully ahead. I think there's, of course, like projects and stuff that I want to do. But I'm always kind of like, I'm so frantic when I'm doing, and I get so anxious about it that I get so absorbed by it. Yeah, I don't know. I think with Freak, it's almost just like habit for me, where we finish one and then we get on to the next one. We don't really like start to think about it, the next one, until we do it. It was a bad decision to start drinking when I have such bad acid reflux. So I'm sorry, everybody, I keep burping. But yeah. Remind me of because there were other parts of that I feel like I'm missing.
Well, just making things, just an artist who makes work the way you make it, finding a way to make it maybe something that is your source of income. I don't know if that's how you think of it, or just finding a way to make it as something sustainable for you to be able to do it on a consistent basis. If that's something that it seems, I look at the work and to me, it seems like someone who's not obviously not casually making this stuff. It's the focus of what you're doing. And
well,
yeah.
Well, I mean, a big part of it is that I live with my uncle. So I've sacrificed a little bit of pride so that I can keep making these comics. I work at a movie theater that's like super flexible. So I don't make a lot of money, but I am afforded in turn to be able to make these comics. Having my uncle there for me is obviously a huge part of that. I wouldn't be able to spend as much time making comics if it weren't for this opportunity. So yeah, I'm going to turn the lights on real quick because it's getting dark. But yeah, I mean, other than that, like, I don't know. I love making comics. I don't know what else to do when I'm not doing it. I play a lot of video games, which I think, I could cut out a little bit to do other more substantial stuff. But, that's my ethos. Keep working, baby.
There's a question from Tony. Tony, do you want to read this out loud, or would you like me to read it for you?
Oh, I could read it.
Hi, Tony.
Great.
Hey, what's up? Sorry, I'm just like lugging compost right now. Yeah, I just wanted to ask if you could talk a bit about like what print means to you all, and you, I think as a collective and you in particular are be devoted to like printing things and not just distributing it through itch or online in various ways. Yeah, could you talk a bit about that?
What print means? Like printing stuff?
Yeah, printing things versus like just like distributing it like as a PDF or other ways that people do that now.
Yeah, I mean, it might be a product of habit. I think, yeah, I don't know. I think because it was taught to me like through the zine class. And I think I don't know if you guys heard that, Miles burped so loud downstairs. He lives right under me. Anyways, yeah, I don't know. I think that's hard because I grew up reading a lot of comics online, and it wasn't something that I like realized until recently, where I was so used to reading manga online that felt like it's like proper format to me. So I never questioned it. But only recently I've become like a stickler about printing and, how I buy a book. I don't know. I think it's just preference. I think it's also something about it being something that you can share. I've met friends of mine. One of my friends, Raul, he knew me prior to us hanging out because his friend bought my comic for him as a birthday gift because he thought he would like it. So I think it's that sort of like, traveling pants thing that can happen with printed media. Or going over to somebody's house and being like, oh, you have the Freak issue. Like, I know these guys, or, it's just cool, it's a cool thing to have happen. Yeah.
Thank you for that question, Tony. Tatiana has a question that is kind of related to that. Do you want to read that?
Sure, quickly. So based even on your last answer, there's so much community that it seems like you're trying to build, like even that transfer of a paper issue or building connections or bringing in people from the ceramics class and asking them to do it and building these anthologies. It very much has that Bay Area ethos too, of that bigger community building. Does that take up a lot of your mental energy too to think about how to continually do that, or is that just something that comes naturally, or sort of out of desperation of just sort of sharing costs and expenses and really trying to promote it?
No, I mean, it's nothing about nothing about cost or sharing expenses and stuff. I think it really just comes down to like people that you've built connections with online or in person. It feels very natural of just, I think a lot of it is founded upon friendship first, and then, of course there are other people where we find online and we're like, oh man, like I would love to have this person in the book, but it really does come down to a friendship aspect. Yeah, I think the thing is, like, when we feel like, when we feel gatekept or isolated outside of a community, we feel like we're totally alone because we think of it, in reference to these people. But I think Freak is a good reminder to ourselves that, like, we have these people in our lives, and sometimes, they're not comic people per se, but they're still people in our lives, and some of them are artists, and they can contribute to Freak, in some way. And so I think reminding yourself of the people that you already have in your life and being proud of those people and doing something with it, and realizing you don't have to kiss anyone's ass to like succeed. If anybody hates you, that's one person, fuck them. You got all these other people in your life that'll support you. And, there's so many ways to win. Who cares? Do your own thing. But yeah.
Well, I think that's a really succinct and I think very beautiful way to sum things up. I really ascribe to that belief as well, that there's people in your life that you can ask to make work that has something that you're involved in, and just by asking them to make work, it's a different facet of your interaction with them, and really beautiful stuff can come out of it.
I think so too.
Does anyone else have any questions? I really like, I kind of like ending things on that note, unless someone has a really, really beautiful question.
You got to top me.
Yeah.
But let me word that better. You got to outdo me there.
Well, thank you, Cristian. And again, I want to remind people that Cristian, I'm going to put this in the chat again. Cristian's book is out now. And let me also put a link in the chat for Freak Comix, so people can see a lot of the other work that you talked about. But thank you so much, Cristian. That was really, really beautiful to hear. And thank you to everyone who asked questions of Cristian. I think it really, really drawed out what we what the theme of what he was talking about in a really great way.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks everybody for coming. Yeah, it went better than I thought it could. So
it went great. We got to hear the peacocks.
Oh, did you hear him?
Well, I heard them a little bit. When you explain what they were.
God, they're so fucking annoying. But
they weren't that bad for the talk. Maybe living next to them would be really hard.
In heat, they get a little crazy. Anyways.
Well, thank you, Cristian. And thanks to everyone who asked questions. And we will be back next week with Tim Goodyear, publisher of Teenage Dinosaur. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Am I out of here too?